Welcome to this explainer. You know, some mysteries just get under your skin and stay there. Today, we're unpacking one of the most baffling cases in American history, the Yuba County Five, often referred to as the American Dyatlov Pass. Back in 1978, 5 young men literally vanished into the freezing California mountains, leaving behind a trail of clues so impossible it still defies logic today. Let's jump right in.
We're actually going to start our timeline near the end. On June 4th, 1978, after the spring thaw had finally melted the heavy mountain snow, a group of motorcyclists stumbled onto an abandoned Forest Service trailer. This was deep in the Plumas National Forest at the Daniel Zink campground, and what they found inside was just grim. They discovered the remains of 32-year-old Ted Viher. He was wrapped tightly in 8 sheets, hands resting on his chest, having tragically frozen and starved to death over a period of many, many weeks.
But here is where the sheer paradox of this crime scene really hits you. Ted died of agonizing starvation and exposure, right? He lost roughly 100 pounds. But get this, he was in a room completely surrounded by survival supplies. Right outside in a storage shed, there was literally a 1-year supply of military sea rations that was largely left untouched. And to make things even crazier, there was a full propane tank connected directly to the trailer. All they had to do was turn a single valve for heat, but nobody ever did.
This incredibly paradoxical scene just forces us to ask a fundamental question. How on earth did 5 friends who were simply heading home from a college basketball game end up trapped in a deadly mountain blizzard? Why did they abandon a perfectly safe path for the frozen wilderness and then, inexplicably, refuse to use the very supplies that could have saved their lives?
Section 1. Who were the boys? The Gateway Gators. Okay, understanding the background of these young men is absolutely crucial to unpacking this whole mystery.
So these 5 inseparable friends from the Yuba City area were all enrolled in a day program for adults with disabilities, known as the Gateway Projects. They love sports. In fact, they made up a basketball team called the Gateway Gators. And on the night they disappeared, they were buzzing with excitement because they were set to play in a major Special Olympics tournament the very next day. Their families said their crisp, white sneakers and uniforms were laid out at home just waiting for them.
Now, the dynamic within this group is a huge piece of the puzzle. 4 of the men had mild intellectual disabilities and were known by their families to be highly docile, easily influenced. But 25-year-old Gary Mathias, he was the outlier. Gary was a military veteran with no intellectual disability, but he was battling severe paranoid schizophrenia. He required strong antipsychotic medications, and without them, well, he had a documented history of severe hallucinations, wandering, and really erratic behavior.
Moving into Section 2, the ill-fated road trip, February 24, 1978. Let's trace their final confirmed steps on the night everything went completely wrong.
The evening actually started out perfectly normal. Around 6 p.m., the guys left Yuba City in Jack Madruga's prized 1969 Mercury Montego. They drove north up to Chico State to cheer on their favorite college basketball team. The game wrapped up around 10 p.m., and they stopped at a local market for a quick snack, cherry and lemon pies, some sodas, and milk. But instead of heading south to their homes, they vanished into the dark. Fast forward to about 11:30 p.m., a stranded motorist named Joseph Shawns spots headlights matching their car on a totally desolate, snow-covered mountain road.
And to really put into perspective how wildly off course they were, just think about this. The drive from Chico back home to Yuba City is a flat, straight, 46-mile drive down a familiar highway. It's an easy trip. Instead, they inexplicably drove 70 miles in the exact opposite direction. They abandoned a paved highway for a treacherous, unpaved logging road, climbing to a freezing elevation of 4,500 feet into the Plumas National Forest. It makes zero sense.
Which brings us to Section 3. Anomalies and perplexing evidence defying all logic. Because when investigators finally pieced together the trail after the spring snow melted, the physical anomalies were just staggering.
By far the most confusing aspect of this entire explainer is the paradox of their survival choices. The men abandoned Jack's car on that mountain road, right? But the car was working perfectly. It had a quarter tank of gas, and it wasn't even badly stuck in the snow. 5 able-bodied men could have easily pushed it out. Plus, once they made that inexplicable trek to the trailer, they faced freezing temperatures but left the propane heater untouched. They slowly starved to death while a 1-year food supply sat there mostly unopened. Why?
Well, there is one detail that raises some serious eyebrows.
A single military C ration can had been opened and eaten at the trailer, and it was opened using a specialized military P-38 can opener. Now, out of the 5 men, only Gary Mathias and Jack Madruga had the military experience to readily operate this specific little tool. So this heavily suggests that either Madruga or Mathias actually made it to that trailer alive with Ted Wayhair.
Looking at the map, investigators realized the group undertook an agonizing and frankly illogical journey. Step 1, they abandoned a perfectly working, warm car. Step 2, they hiked 19 miles uphill through 4 to 6 foot snowdrifts in the pitch black. And remember, they were wearing low-cut shoes, light jackets, street clothes. They absolutely were not dressed for winter survival. And then step 3, some of them actually arrive at that campground trailer. Honestly, it's a seemingly impossible physical feat.
But tragically, not all of them made it to the shelter of the trailer. Months later, search teams discovered the scattered remains of Jack Madruga and Bill Sterling, about halfway between the abandoned car and the campground. They had succumbed to brutal winter exposure. Jackie Hewitt's remains were found much closer to the trailer. What this proves is that this once inseparable group had tragically separated in the vast wilderness, dying alone in the snow.
Section 4. Theories and lingering questions. Trying to make sense of the impossible. Let's impartially explore the leading theories that attempt to explain why these 5 men marched to their demise.
So, theories from investigators, journalists, and the families range all over the place. Some suggest they were forced off the road and up the mountain by a malicious third party. Others hypothesize that Gary Mathias, missing his crucial medication, suffered a tragic schizophrenic break and unwittingly led his easily influenced friends astray. Another theory guesses they fled into the wilderness because they saw a crime back in Chico. And finally, some look back at their community center, wondering if they were targeted in connection to some recent violent arsons at the Gateway projects.
Now, the families of the men firmly believe they were coerced. Jack's mother, Mabel Madruga, stated emphatically there was some force that made him go up there. We know good and well that somebody made them do it. You see, Jack Madruga was incredibly proud of his car. He never let anyone else drive it. And his family insists there is no way he would have abandoned his prized vehicle with the window rolled down in a freezing snowstorm unless he was forced to at gunpoint.
And adding some really chilling context to that foul play theory is the history of the Gateway Project's safe house itself. In the years just prior to the guys disappearing, the facility had been the target of extreme local hostility. I mean, it was firebombed, someone threw a Molotov cocktail through an office window, and tragically, the center's director was actually found murdered, burned in his own apartment. While no direct link to the 5 men has ever been proven, this dark context definitely leaves investigators wondering if local hostility played a role.
Further complicating the timeline is that stranded witness we mentioned earlier, Joseph Shantz. He was stuck in the snow that night and was actually suffering a mild heart attack. He claimed he saw headlights, heard whistling, and spotted a group of men and possibly a woman with a baby moving around in the dark near a pickup truck. He said when he called out for help, the lights instantly went out. But here's the catch. Shantz later admitted he was in excruciating pain and possibly hallucinating. So that casts a pretty heavy shadow of doubt on the only supposed eyewitness account of that night.
Yet, despite all the searches and finding the remains of 4 of the men, there is one glaring omission in this case that prevents it from ever truly being closed. One man from the Yuba County 5 has never been found. Not to this day.
Inside that Forest Service trailer, investigators found Gary Mathias' tennis shoes left behind. But interestingly, Ted Wayhair's larger leather shoes were missing from his body. This piece of physical evidence strongly suggests that Gary Mathias survived long enough to reach the trailer, took Ted's larger shoes to accommodate his severely frostbitten, swollen feet, and then wandered back out into the wilderness. But despite massive search efforts, Gary's body has never been recovered.
Which leaves us with this final, haunting question regarding the American Dyatlov Pass. If Gary Mathias survived the horrors of that trailer, what did he witness? Did he leave to find help for his dying friend? And will the vast, unforgiving Plumas National Forest ever give up its final secret? I want you to take a moment and just think about what you would have done in those pitch-black, freezing woods. Thanks for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the unknown.